All right. Thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. Of course, I'm the author of Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Partners, and Friends Who Love a Chronic Lyme Survivor Need to Know. And Laura, I'm the host of the Love, Hope, Lyme podcast, of which you're on. You can find the podcast on Apple and wherever it is you get your podcast. If you're listening on Apple, please go up, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate it. And if you're watching this on YouTube, which many of you are, please give us a thumbs up, give us a comment, and we would greatly appreciate that. And then go listen to our back issues as well. You know, we're recording today's show at the end of 2023, and you're listening to this in 2024. And we have the CEO of the Global Lyme Alliance, Laura MacNeill. And Laura, I'm very, very excited to have you on the show because, first off, GLA does so many amazing things. Of course, you have your gala in October, and we had Kenzie Vath, who
That's right.
was one of your award recipients on a previous episode. Such bravery with people like Kenzie. Don't you agree?
Truly a lifetime of battling for her own wellness. And now Kenzie, like many others that sort of surround GLA and are the ultimate supporters, they are now giving back and trying to really drive forward so that others don't have to suffer through the same experience. So with Kenzie, it truly does feel like she's made the whole world her neighborhood, and she's trying to protect everybody.
Yeah, what an amazing person. And you're relatively new to GLA. So give us a little bit of an intro. Tell us about your journey to get here. And then we want to get deep into three specific aspects: diagnostics, treatment, and some of the work that's going on in mental health. And again, the listeners of the Love Hope Lyme podcast are typically either family members or friends or partners who want to know more about how they can support their loved one, and also chronic Lyme survivors who are looking for some ideas on what they should be communicating to those people to get the support that they need. As we know, I wrote the book because I met so many people who felt abandoned, who felt lonely. People didn't understand. It's a hidden disease, of course. And let's get detail into some of the great things that are happening. So first off, give us the intro to you, then give us the intro to the Global Lyme Alliance, and let's get deep into it.
Awesome. Thank you. And thank you for highlighting GLA on your podcast today. So I'm Laura MacNeill. I am the CEO of Global Lyme Alliance. I'm about a year and a half into my role here. However, my career has been based on nonprofit support, nonprofit executive leadership. So this is what I've set out to do for my life, is just to give back and to bring structure and support to missions that can make a big difference in the whole world, in the global scheme of things. So mostly health-based research organizations. So I came to GLA because, well, for one, I live in an endemic area. I live outside of Boston. I've been in the Northeast Territory my whole life. I've been fortunate to not have been exposed to Lyme disease that I'm aware of. But however, that's just a game of math at this point. So I have young kids. I have people I care about. We like to be outside. Therefore, Lyme disease is a problem that, could impact us at any time. I think, Fred, as I started to really get to understand what was going on with Lyme disease, as I began getting to know this community and I was peeling back that onion, that's when I started to really say, we have to solve this problem, right? So just a little bit about, I know your community's aware, but let's just refresh of what's going on in tick-borne disease. Lyme disease is a global health crisis. We talk a lot about it in the Northeast of the United States, but this is a problem that spans the entire globe. There's an estimated 500,000 new cases in the US alone each year. We anticipate in this next year that number to really skyrocket. That's due to a reporting change. So right now, in order for a Lyme case to be reported, you have to have a positive test, and then your clinician, your doctor, has to actually verify your symptoms to make that a solid active case. They have now removed that clinician reporting. So it's just going to be active positive tests will be reported up. So we do anticipate these will be more realistic numbers going forward. And while many people are treated successfully, far too many are not. So we have millions of people just in the United States that are suffering from chronic Lyme, and it's debilitating symptoms that just are pervasive and do not go away. So one of the challenges is Lyme disease can manifest in a wide range of symptoms: flu-like symptoms, physical impairments, heart issues, depression, and suicidal ideation, just to name a few. Because it presents in such a diverse set of symptoms, This underscores the need that we have as a community to have improved awareness, diagnostics, and treatment. So the other thing that I didn't know before I joined this community is that ticks can transmit more than a dozen tick-borne diseases to people, animals, and birds. So when undiagnosed or untreated, any one of these bacteria can spread throughout your body, leading to new or worsening symptoms. So this early detection is critical, and we still don't have this as a community. So that's one of the things GLA is really laser focused on. Current diagnostics today can miss up to 60% of early stage Lyme disease cases. It takes time for your body to produce detectable antibodies, especially with tick-borne disease. And this delay can result in false negative test results. Additionally, Lyme disease lacks a universal diagnostic method, so treatment options are limited or unproven. So despite its prevalence, Lyme disease receives a disproportionately lower funding than other infectious diseases. So it has more cases annually than HIV/AIDS, West Nile virus, and malaria combined, but receives only a fraction of the research funding allocated to these diseases. So the funding gap hinders scientific advancements, increases the healthcare cost, and countless people, as you said, are suffering in silence. So that's really where Global Lyme Alliance is born. We are trying to shorten the gap between current research, viable, innovative research that can happen today, and these patients that are out there that are suffering, as well as their loved ones that are lost in the medical system and trying to navigate this themselves. So to date, GLA has raised and invested an incredible $17 million for research with a specific focus on diagnostic and treatments for tick-borne disease. Our ambition is to enhance the precision of disease detection with accurate diagnostics, discover innovative treatments, and to just relentlessly pursue a cure. We have achieved several really important milestones. And that is inclusive of studies around mental health, studies around better, like I said, improved diagnostics, and we've had some really exciting stuff happening in treatments. And I'm happy to dive in.
All right, so let's dive in here a little bit. So I'm just kind of curious before we talk about diagnostics first. When you wake up in the morning, what do you think about? What do you think is your priority? And you're running this amazing organization that's done so much, has done so much in the areas that we're going to be talking about today. But when you wake up, what is, what gets you excited about what you're doing to help? Because, and just one quick thing, I mean, you mentioned 500,000 new cases per year. I've heard some estimates that there are 63 million people around the globe who might have Lyme disease. And I've seen stats like 1 out of every 7 people may have something related to it. And obviously, it's not just Lyme that comes from a tick. There's, you mentioned a dozen. I've heard as many as 24 different tick-borne illnesses to make it even more complicated for the treatment. But what gets you, when you get up in the morning, what is the first thing that you're thinking about as it relates to what you can do for the Lyme community?
I think what I wake up thinking about, what keeps me up at night, is probably the same answer, but it's the enormous potential we have. I genuinely believe that this is the time for Lyme disease. I know a lot of people out there have been suffering in silence for decades. There hasn't been any cutting edge research. There hasn't been any progress or improvement. And in fact, the current diagnostic that we use today was created when we were using typewriters. There has been a very, very slow progress in this disease space. I believe that there's a lot shifting, especially on the heels of COVID-19. The Lyme community got disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. I know a lot of folks that report, that they had setbacks in their health, they weren't able to clear COVID the way some others could. It brought back their Lyme symptoms, their tick-borne infection symptoms. But this also woke up the community to infectious disease that has, ongoing symptomology. So the CDC just put Borrelia burgdorferi just in the last 8 weeks on the list of known infections that have long symptomology, which should have been there a long time ago, if we're really being honest. But the fact that it's there today is a very exciting step forward. So I think what keeps me up at night, what I'm most excited about, is harnessing the awareness and the attention that's on this disease today, taking advantage of the boomer community that's moving into retirement, spending more time outside. I mean, if you're outside for a disproportionate amount of time, you are going to be at risk for a tick-borne illness. So I think that there's a moment for every disease, and I think the moment for tick-borne disease is right now. And I'm really happy to be here.
No, that is great. And actually, as we're going to talk about diagnostics now, I live in Northern Virginia, and Loudoun County is also a ground zero for Lyme, has historically been. I know there's some great things happening at two universities near me. I live 5 minutes away from George Mason University, and they were one of the recipients of the great program that the Cohen Foundation is doing. And you and I talked about Virginia Tech, which is 4 hours away. And I have tons of friends whose children go to Virginia Tech. And it was so exciting to see some of the work that is going on there. All right. So again, we're talking today with the CEO of the Global Lyme Alliance, Laura MacNeill. Laura, let's talk about diagnostics, some of the positive things that are happening there.
Yeah, so one way that GLA keeps a finger on the pulse in the Lyme and tick-borne disease field is by attending scientific conferences all over the world. We host our own as well. These research gatherings foster collaboration and sharing of cutting-edge data. So GLA's science team was attending such a conference when Dr. Brandon Jutras of Virginia Tech gave a talk about how he and his colleagues had just discovered that the Lyme bacterium, which is Borrelia burgdorferi, has a unique biomarker, and they've called it peptidoglycan. So GLA saw the potential for this early stage research to be developed into a much needed direct diagnostic test, as well as a therapeutic target, and encouraged Dr. Jutras to apply for funding through our research grant portal. So even in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic, our donors never wavered in their support, and thanks to their passion and generosity, we were able to begin funding Dr. Brandon Jutras's work in 2021. So peptidoglycan is a part of the bacterial cell wall, and it's shed while the bacteria grows. So Borrelia burgdorferi's peptidoglycan is chemically unique, making it different than all the other bacterial peptidoglycans. Dr. Jutras's goal is to develop a direct diagnostic test that can identify this molecule within hours of infection. So right now, the standard test, you have to wait 6 weeks if you know you got bit to have enough antibodies to test positive and not get a false negative. This test would be able to identify that specific peptidoglycan within hours of infection, and also look for fragments in patients with chronic symptoms. So such a test would launch us into the next era of Lyme disease diagnostics and driving us towards fulfilling our mission to improve these diagnostic tests. So in addition to serving as a potential diagnostic biomarker, this peptidoglycan may also serve as that therapeutic target. So Dr. Jutras and his team hypothesized that during the Borrelia burgdorferi infection, released peptidoglycan fragments drive patient inflammation and may continue to do so after the infection has been treated. This is that chronic symptoms associated after you know you've been impacted. In fact, they've shown that Lyme bacteria, the peptidoglycan itself, can cause arthritis in mice. So if they just put that in a mouse, the mouse develops arthritis. So they're theorizing right now that strategies to destroy the peptidoglycan may be of therapeutic benefit for those suffering from chronic Lyme disease. And we're really proud to be funding Dr. Jutras and be at the forefront of his promising work. Just this past spring, they were awarded over $1.2 million from several other funding sources to be able to further this research and develop that rapid Lyme test. If you want to keep following this, you can come to GLA or you can go to Virginia Tech and follow Dr. Jutras directly on his work.
That's amazing. And once you and I talked about this before in the prep for this podcast, and I reached out to them, and I'm very excited to see what they're doing, and to see not just there but in other places as well. Laura, before we talk about treatment, some of the great stuff that's happening in treatment, I want to give you an opportunity to pitch GLA to donors. Right. Okay. So, you've talked a lot about some of the stuff to you, but if I'm a foundation or an individual, and I've been touched by Lyme for whatever the reason is, maybe a family member or whatever it might be, give us a 30-second pitch on why they should consider donating to the Global Lyme Alliance.
Yes. Thank you for that. So
Welcome.
the Global Lyme Alliance is actually an organization that's several nonprofits merged together to be able to have a mission that's all encompassing. So we do research first and foremost. We also have patient services, but what we have is a multi-decade history with very passionate donors that are in the trenches with their loved ones or themselves that bring their passion forward. It's one of the reasons why I joined this group was the board of directors, the volunteers that are very close to this organization. Some of them started their portion of this organization at their coffee table 30 years ago because their kids were sick and there were no answer. So if you want to support the Lyme disease community, whether today through a peer-to-peer program or education, work that GLA is doing right now, but most importantly through this heightened research to have that better diagnostic or treatment, GLA is the organization that's leading in research grants. We also have we're the only nonprofit that has a science team on board. We have 2 PhDs that work around the clock to find the best research, to attend these scientific conferences, to connect researchers together and continue to foster and forward this, our research program. We also have a scientific advisory board. These are the top researchers across the globe that are doing work in tick-borne disease research that come together and support the research that we fund. So the vetting process is extensive. And we also have a medical advisory board. So GLA truly hugs the middle between the community that's out there fighting patients today with the resources that are available today, which we know are limited and lacking, and the research community that needs to come together and drive and solve this problem. So when you support GLA, you are supporting the middle and the top tier teams that are putting the best minds together to forward and solve this problem.
Yeah, that's amazing. There's, as you're saying, it's when I started doing the research for my book, Love, Hope, Lyme, I was shocked to find out how little funding was going into this particular disease. I mean, everybody knows cancer, and
That's
billions have gone into cancer, as it should. And where you came from before, a lot of money went into that as well, and
right.
other organizations as well. And I was really just blown away at how little attention was given to Lyme. And I agree with you, the COVID has definitely helped raise the profile. It's definitely Jake. There's also been I hate to use the word fortuitously, but some celebrities who have come out and have announced that they've had Lyme, and they've been public, some that are involved with your organization as well. All right, the second category we want to talk about is treatment, and what are some of the things that are happening in the treatment space that you're looking at?
Yeah, there's no FDA approved treatment for chronic Lyme disease today. So right now, if you know you're in the window early on with a tick-borne infection, you're most likely going to be afforded a really strong antibiotic, something like doxycycline. Some physicians, depending on where you are in the country, might offer you one pill. Some might give you the 2 to 4 weeks you might really need. It depends on where you are in your infection. But even doxycycline, which can be very effective in that early stage of infection, it is not very effective if this bacteria has gotten very pervasive in your system. So in 2015, GLA funded a drug discovery program with Dr. Kim Lewis, who's at Northeastern University, leading to the discovery of hygromycin A. Hygromycin A is an overlooked antibiotic from 1953. So it's not that it was just discovered, but what Dr. Lewis's lab revealed in 2021 is that hygromycin A is highly effective against the Lyme bacteria. This particular antibiotic loves spirochetal bacteria, which is what the shape of Lyme
Mhm.
disease. It's shaped like
Mhm.
a corkscrew. And so they're looking at the potential to cure early Lyme disease and prevent chronic conditions through the use of hygromycin A. So building on this discovery, GLA proudly partnered with Dr. Lewis and Flightpath Bioscience, which is a biotech company. And remarkably, we learned that not only does hygromycin A kill the Lyme bacteria in a test tube and in animal studies, but unlike antibiotics such as doxycycline, it's unlikely to harm the good bacteria in a patient's intestine. So I know everyone listening to your podcast who's been impacted deeply with a tick-borne disease and their caregivers, they've watched this. Other symptomology come up, maybe a lot of GI issues, gut health, which can lead to a systemic problem across your entire system. And that's because doxycycline just sort of kills everything. It's a very strong antibiotic. And it can really destroy the healthy bacteria that you need in your body to continue to function normally against all the other bacterial infections. So what's very exciting about Hygromycin A is it's not going to take down the bacteria that you need. It's only going to target in a precision way the that spirochetal bacteria that's in your system that could cause harm. So we're really excited to announce that Hygromycin A is moving into the clinical stage. So in January 2024, so in like 2 weeks, they're going to start the first stage of human clinical trials. Matt Tyndall, the CEO of Flightpath Biosciences, just gave us an update. They're starting with a healthy cohort in Australia. They're doing that because Borrelia burgdorferi is not found in Australia. So the first stage is Hygromycin A safe for people who do not have the infection? There be a really short trial over there. They're looking at maybe 6 to 8 weeks. And once they've proven that, yep, this is safe and effective for folks that aren't sick, they can move the trial into the United States and several other countries. And then they can take on patients who have been impacted by Lyme disease. So we are eagerly anticipating progress on the road ahead. We're working together with Flightpath Biosciences, and it's in really good hands right now. So we're just really excited to see their progress in 2024.
Now that's exciting, and hopefully it'll lead to some great things, because as you said, typical treatment is doxy, if you're an adult, and it goes after all the bacteria, not just Lyme, and it destroys the gut. And there's always debates. How long should I do it? Like you just said, sometimes a doctor will say, one pill, or you hear about people who are on, the IV and the drip, and gut health is always a commonality with that. And best wishes on the success of that. And it's, one of the common things is it's, they, a lot of times with treatment, they look at things that have been used for other things, right? There's some drugs that have been used for alcoholism, for example, that some doctors are looking at as a possible treatment for Lyme disease. And it's exciting to see, Laura, that there's a focus specifically on creating solutions to help people who are going through this. And the reality is, once it gets into the chronic stage, it's hell. It's very challenging. Speaking of that, let's talk a little bit about mental health and some of the things that GLA, the Global Lyme Alliance, is focused on.
Yeah, I think of all of the projects I've highlighted today, this might be the most significant because it really addresses the struggle and some of the medical symptoms that are happening that really present as psychiatric symptoms in patients today. So Global Lyme Alliance helped to establish a Lyme Center at Columbia University. And one of the most important studies that came out of that, which collected data from almost 7 million people over a 22-year span, shows that there's a significant impact that Lyme disease has on mental health. So Dr. Michael Benrose of Copenhagen University Hospital and Dr. Brian Fallon at Columbia University, they both supported their major findings that there's an elevated risk of psychiatric illness in Lyme disease patients. This was a 2-year study that GLA funded, and it's published in the American Journal of Psychiatry, if anybody wants to go and read the full results. But it was long suspected that Lyme disease may increase the risk of psychiatric disorders, including depression and suicidal ideation. However, knowledge to date has been based on a small study, limited number of patients, which just doesn't get the same amount of support and attention. So this groundbreaking study led by the Copenhagen team was a large epidemiological analysis of Danish health, labor, and administrative registries that collected data of almost 7 million people over this 22-year span. This population included more than 12,000 people that were diagnosed with Lyme disease. Beyond its large sample size, the paper also adjusts for age, sex, comorbidities, and socioeconomic factors that may also influence mental health. So what the study found was that with a single diagnosis of Lyme disease, there's a 24% increased risk of a mental disorder, including depression. With 2 or more episodes of Lyme disease, that risk increases to 79%. Moreover, people with Lyme disease have a 2-fold higher risk, so 75% higher, of dying by suicide than those without Lyme disease. The elevated risk of mental disorders was highest in subjects that were in the age range of 20 to 29, suggesting that particular vulnerability of young people who are impacted. Of the study results, lead investigator Dr. Benrose said that treating clinicians and patients should be aware of an increased risk of mental health problems, particularly the first year after a severe Lyme disease infection. And if a mental health issue arises, patients should seek relevant treatment and guidance. So this is a call out and maybe some validation to those in your community that have been watching folks suffer and watching them also experience mental health disorders. This is part of the equation. It also is very alarming to me living in an endemic area of how easy it could be to get bit by more than one tick. And so everybody needs to be aware of this risk. And if something is creeping up, or if you're noticing a change from someone that you're watching and you care about, this could be directly related to their Lyme disease bacterial infection, and you should go out and seek treatment immediately. GLA offers a healthcare referral program. So if you are in this, if you're listening to this and you say, I think this is something, you can go to your current physician. You could also reach out to our healthcare referral program. There's an online form you can fill out. We have volunteers that have been working in this space for over 15 years that can map you to a physician who might understand what's going on based on the symptoms of you or a loved one. So if you're taking care of somebody, you can go on and submit that form as well. And we can help give you some doctors that are Lyme literate, but also they're acknowledging this and they can help get you on the right path.
Yeah, I mean, the mental health is so important. I mean, if you're listening to this and you're a loved one or a family member or a partner who has someone in your life who's a chronic Lyme survivor, one of the challenges that I've heard from so many people is that, and we've talked about this over the course of the last 20 minutes, of the challenge of treating chronic Lyme. You try everything, right? So you have this disease, and I've heard people who've they'll try something and then it'll be okay. Then the next day something else will happen, and then they'll treat that, and the next day they'll treat something else. And imagine having the anxiety of not being able to treat. If you have a headache, you take some Tylenol or something, or aspirin, and the next morning you're usually going to be okay, right? You have a broken ankle, you put yourself in a cast for 6 weeks, you're probably going to be okay, right? With this particular disease, especially the chronic stage, you could try so many things, and you don't get solved. So you go through this endless loop. And I'm glad to see that there's consciousness of this. I want to just acknowledge you once again. The Global Lyme Alliance has done so many amazing things, for, again, diagnostics, treatment. Some of the things are right on the cusp. And the way that you go about the work is remarkable, and the way that you're providing education for the marketplace as well to help people understand the possibility of solutions is quite remarkable. So I want to acknowledge you and the organization. Laura, typically the people who are listening, they want to get a little bit of advice, a tip or something. What would be your final thought or your advice for those who love a chronic Lyme survivor on things they should be conscious of, or a thing they should be aware of?
Yeah, it is such a lonely, invisible disease. And I think that finding a community, it doesn't matter what you're going through, finding a community that acknowledges you can really pull you through your darkest days. So if you want to come to Global Lyme Alliance for that, we're on all the major social media platforms. You can find us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can go to our website and sign up for our newsletter. It's monthly. We're pushing out everything I just talked about, plus other resources, activities that we're doing. You can also go to our patient support page, which will have our peer-to-peer program. If you're watching somebody suffer silently, and they're alone, please encourage them to connect with a peer. So what we do is we take folks that have been in a position where they've been through this and they want to give advice, they're mentors, to people who are looking for that one-on-one support, someone that you can unpack with and say, oh, it's so hard when my loved one didn't believe me, or I had to tell my employer, or my school was giving me truancy issues because I couldn't get there, and someone going, I was there, I know how you feel. So that's what that peer-to-peer program is. So I would encourage you to check that out. And if you're interested in being a mentor, if you're listening to this saying, I get this, and you want to give back, we are certainly always in need of folks that want to serve in that position and talk to others that are going through it. We do our best in that program to connect people who have similar demographics, similar issues, similar diagnosis. So it's as catered as we can to age range, areas in the country, what you've been particularly diagnosed with. And so it's as tailored as we can without getting too micro on it. My other advice is that there have just this past spring, actually, 2 really great documentaries came out. If your organization, your followers aren't aware of yet, the first one I want to mention is a documentary called I'm Not Crazy, I'm Sick. The crazies crossed out. It is a wonderful view. It was created by a family that we honored at our gala in 2022, at Kim and Addie Cluworth. And they have been going through this. Kim, as a caregiver, brought forward a very emotional, touching, validating documentary, highlighting the silent suffering and what this disease can do to a family inside and out. And if you have folks in your world that are still struggling to understand what you're going through, even though your doctors are saying you're sick and they're saying, I don't see it, you should just feel better, I highly recommend you check that documentary out. You can download it from, I know you can download it from Apple iTunes, but there's a website you can find them. Go find that documentary, watch it over the holidays, watch it in the new year, and have others sit down and watch it with you, because it really does do the heavy lifting of explaining what's happening through other stories, and it's very validating. The second documentary is The Quiet Epidemic. This documentary had a different angle. They really tackled why we're so far behind, where there's major gaps in funding, and what that is doing in our medical healthcare system, and why we need to take action and move forward. So if you want to get fired up about getting involved in what we're doing here at GLA and what other organizations are doing to solve the problem, The Quiet Epidemic will do it. So both of those fantastic documentaries, both can really help speak to you and speak for you if you're having trouble articulating what's going on. And again, we have resources for you. Come to our site, reach out. Our entire board of directors is composed of people who have been in this and have been through this. And we have folks that are willing to get on the phone and help navigate you. You are not alone.
Yeah, so we've had Lindsay Keys, who's the co-director for The Quiet Epidemic. She has been on the Love Hope Lyme podcast, and I've seen both of those documentaries. I've seen The Quiet Epidemic 4 times. I've done a bunch of book signings in consistency with showings, and the range of emotions I've gone through has been, like you said, inspirational, but also angry and sad. And they do a great job in explaining the why. I mean, why I have the Love Hope Lyme podcast, why I wrote the book, why Global Lyme Alliance exists. So listen, once again, Laura, I want to acknowledge you again for the amazing work GLA is doing. I want to thank you for explaining some of the latest developments in diagnostics, treatments, and mental health. And I want to thank all of our listeners and watchers today of the Love Hope Lyme podcast. My name is Fred Diamond.